Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked on Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers blow a prime opportunity to put a hammerlock on their first-round series with the Grizzlies. They lose game 2, even though Ja wasn't there. That's next.
You are Locked on Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked on Lakers first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. No matter how or where you get your podcast, it's always going to be free. It's never going to be behind a paywall. And of course, Locked on Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to find an audience of more than 15,000 subscribers, Lakers fans, NBA fans, many of whom are really, really angry Thursday following the Lakers 103-93 loss in game 2 to Memphis Wednesday night. And, this is a game, Andy, that we talked about. No Ja Morant. It was a prime opportunity for the Lakers to take a stranglehold on this series, go up 2-0, coming back to Los Angeles. And it's not just that they lost, because that can happen, but they were terrible in this game in the first half, in particular. And I, for one, Andy, have not seen a playoff performance like this in a while, at least one that I can remember, where a team comes out and looks this detached and disinterested and is so thoroughly outplayed by an opponent.
I mean, it's not even just the idea of no Ja being there. He wasn't available because of that hand injury that I had suspected he was not going to be able to play through. I know a lot of people assume it's the playoffs. You're going to try to get through whatever. Ultimately, guys will play through whatever. He looked the minute that happened, and the way he talked after the game, like he thought this was going to be an impossibility. But it's also, too, the Grizzlies not having Steven Adams, not having Brandon Clarke, being a weakened team, seemingly with only 3 or 4 players that you would really feel comfortable about giving big minutes in a rotation in a really important playoff game. And I think it's emblematic of the way the Grizzlies ultimately just hustled more, had more intensity, more focus, more determination from the beginning, that the star of this game, without Ja Morant, wasn't Jaren Jackson Jr., who probably played the best of any Grizzly in game 1, and I had thought maybe they'd be looking to feature more offensively. It wasn't Desmond Bane, who can seriously get on heaters from time to time. It wasn't Dillon Brooks, who fancies himself the best player on the Grizzlies. It was Xavier Tillman, who in this game had a career high in the playoffs, 22 points. Actually, check that. Career high, regular season or the playoffs. 12 rebounds, which
we're not sure what he's done in the preseason, but it's a good game for Xavier.
Yeah, 12 rebounds. It's close to a career high period and nearly doubled his career high for rebounds in the playoffs. He matched his season high, those 12 rebounds. 10 baskets that he had in this game matched a career high for buckets in a game, and he outscored every Laker other than LeBron. And no disrespect to Xavier Tillman, who deserves a bleep ton of credit for showing out tonight in a really important game for his team. Dude came into this series averaging 7 points per game. This should not happen.
Yep.
And the fact that it did happen speaks to all the different things that the Lakers did to really allow this to happen.
Yeah, and I we're going to talk about, Anthony Davis. You mentioned 10 buckets for Xavier Tillman. Anthony Davis had 4, and Tillman, he had 2 trips to the line. Davis took 4 free throws. So it's like you start comparing those two players, statistically speaking. It was a terrible night, especially offensively, for Anthony Davis. It was a terrible night for D'Angelo Russell. And we're gonna get into some of those individual performances over the course of the show.
It's frankly a
But it's
terrible
probably
night for most Lakers who stepped on the floor.
pretty much. Some were more terrible than others, but it wasn't that good for pretty much anybody. And but like in the because this sort of stuff happens over the course of a regular season. Stuff happens, and there is in that sort of grand debate when you look at sort of each game, you look at it when a team doesn't play well. There are people, there are fans, there are certain commentators, whatever, who just look at it and say, they don't care. They weren't trying. They played with their food. They didn't respect their opponent, whatever it is. And anytime a team plays bad, it's because they didn't give a bleep. They weren't invested or whatever, as opposed to just sometimes you want it and you play poorly. I try really hard to, and I think my default is not confusing poor performance with poor intent and poor process, poor all that other stuff.
Yeah, we've disagreed on this.
And I understand that. I texted you during this game, and I was like, how I normally look at these things. This is not one of those times. The Lakers were it is how they lost this game that I think is so incredibly frustrating, because even with a weakened Grizzlies team, everybody had seen the statistics, how well they played without Ja, and they're used to it. And granted, a lot of those numbers came with Adams and with Clarke in the lineup. I'm not justifying it, but they're not garbage, and they don't lack confidence completely when Ja isn't there. You could easily come up with a scenario. Lakers come out, they don't shoot well. Well, that happened anyway. Okay, they miss a lot of shots. Bane has a really good night. Dillon Brooks is uncharacteristically efficient. And, Memphis makes a lot of shots and the Lakers lose a game they could/should have won. This wasn't that. Memphis got off to a really bad start offensively. They were cold at the beginning of the game, and the Lakers were too. And, then the Lakers just got lazy with the ball. They were beaten to every loose ball. They were turning the ball over. It was well beyond just cold shooting. And by the time they figured something out defensively, at the very least in the second half, because Memphis scored 59 points in the first half and only 44 in the second, the Lakers might have responded a little bit defensively, but still couldn't get a bucket and still couldn't find any offense. And they were too far down. They couldn't pull off that sort of flip the switch miracle comeback that I think they probably thought they had in their bag into halftime, probably entering the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you bring up that flip the switch thing, Brian, because I was thinking about this, and you and I have covered 3 championship teams, and we were around those teams a lot. The 2020 team with LeBron and AD, both of Kobe and Powell's championships. We, occasionally traveled with those teams. We were in the locker room all the time. We knew those teams inside out. And sometimes championships teams will not only just play badly, they will play with a lack of intensity. Like even in the playoffs. Like I remember in 2009, the first of the Kobe Powell championship seasons, their semifinals against the Rockets took playing with their food to unprecedented levels. It was like astonishing, jaw-dropping. It's like playing with your food, but on acid or something. Like they allowed Houston to hang around and turn this thing into a 7-game series. This was a Rockets team that did not have Tracy McGrady for the entire playoffs. Yao Ming, I believe, for the last 4 games. The second leading scorer on that team, I looked it up just out of curiosity because I knew I was going to bring this up. Aaron Brooks was the second leading scorer on that team in that series. And, this was also, too, we talked about this, that 2009 team. That is probably the most intensely focused team that you and I have ever covered in any sport, because they were coming off that 2008 shellacking in Boston, the Game 6 39-point loss. Like they were incredibly focused, and it still happened to them. But the difference is you knew that team was good. They played together for a long time. They had a track record. And even if it's dangerous to play with the flip the switch mentality, they at least had earned the right to do it, even if it's not smart. This team, I think, is a legitimate roster, but they have not earned the right to do the flip the switch thing. They have not earned that right yet. They're not good enough to do that.
No. And so we'll unpack more of this, what this missed opportunity means for the series at large, and going forward, because it is important to separate the angst and the disappointment over the work that they did or didn't do on Wednesday, and step back and look what's actually happening in the series, but also some of these individual performances, because there were some that were notably awful. We'll get to all of it next.
Locked on Lakers is brought to you by eBay Motors, and for a championship team, or a team that is aspiring to win a championship, it is all about making sure every player is a perfect fit, and it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts or accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can make sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know that part will fit, or get your money back. And just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, that part always blows my mind. I had no idea there were 122 million parts, period, out there. You will be back in the game in no time. And after all, it is easy to bring home a win when the right parts, they are guaranteed. So get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
So game 3 will be back in Los Angeles on Wednesday. I'm sorry, game 2 is Wednesday. Game 3 will be Saturday. The Lakers get a couple days off in between. More time is always good for them. And, then game followed by game 4 on Monday. It's funny because if you look at this, Andy, and you say, if you told me before the series started, the Lakers were going to split in Memphis, okay, I'm on board. I don't even need necessarily to hear the end of that sentence. But when you then get the context of they win the game that Ja doesn't play, or that Ja plays, and they lose the one where he doesn't in such disappointing fashion. It's not that the series is over. It's not that they can't win it. It's not that they might not go on to win it. But oh my God, it is so disappointing to see the complete and total unwillingness to even give yourself a chance to take advantage of the good fortune that you had. Because another couple days is a couple more days where Ja might be able to come back and play in game 3. And I realize they won the game without him. Now they're confident and they might be getting him back. If they come back, and obviously if they lose this series, or if it gets really deep, we will all look back on what happened in game 2 and point to it and say, well, that was the miss. That was the thing. That was the opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even just the idea that you've let them believe that they can beat the Lakers, because this is a team that basically their blood type is bravado. Like the Grizzlies are never going to stop believing in themselves. But if they're down 0-2, heading to Los Angeles, not knowing for sure what the deal is with Ja's hand, and they come off a pretty rough loss, they might start thinking, we can hang with this team, but we don't know if we have enough time. We may not have the runway necessary to get ourselves back in the series.
Yes.
We may have to play damn near perfect basketball in order to make this happen.
There's a reason, Andy, mathematically teams that are down 0-2 almost never come back. And when they're down 0-2, and I don't have the number in front of me, when you're down 0-2, having lost the first 2 games on your own floor, I don't know what the series records are in that particular scenario, but I am 100% willing to bet that the odds of that team coming back from 0-2 when you have already lost home court advantage are virtually zero, like historically speaking. Yeah. And like, it would have put the Lakers in a situation. LeBron talked about it after the game of the excitement that they have coming back to the crypt and playing a game in front of a full house, a full playoff crowd, which is something they haven't done really ever, in the Anthony Davis, LeBron era. And it's just a new opportunity for them. The building is going to be really keyed up, and they're in. And he's excited to play that game, and that's true. And like, it's the Lakers did what they needed to do, big picture, but they were in they could have been in a position where a split for 3 and 4 would have been fine. And you go back to Memphis and you're up 3-1. You're going back to Memphis for game. Okay, fine. And you have 3 chances to win, 2 of which, aren't on your home floor. Okay. And that opportunity has been squandered. And you look at it, and so much of this, Andy, can be tied to individual performances. I mean, I think if you take away, once you get past LeBron, who wasn't perfect, but 28 points, 12 to 23, 12 rebounds, 3 assists. The outside shooting wasn't there tonight. He was 1 for 8. But it's hard to complain too much about that. And then Hachimura was 7 of 12. He had another 20 points, 5 rebounds. If it wasn't LeBron, Hachimura was, the best player the Lakers had on Wednesday.
They were the only 2 players that I feel like don't have to go back to LA feeling down on themselves on some level from this game, other than the fact just you lost.
Right.
And you're going to look back on buckets that you missed, rotations that you didn't hit, whatever, stuff like that. You're going to think about the things that maybe you could have done more perfectly. But those are the only 2 guys in this game that I thought put forth, like, you don't have much to be upset about with either one of them, or that did their part, if nothing else. So they're the only 2 guys that I think definitively did their part in this game.
But you look around the rest of the box score, and I'm going to kind of go backwards here a little bit. They got no points from Troy Brown in 11 minutes. They got no points from Dennis Schroeder in 16 minutes. He was 0 for 3, only took 3 shots. Was a minus 13 in 16 minutes. They got, Austin Reeves was okay in spots, but not great. But 5 of 12. Vanderbilt was, we saw sort of, it was just one of those games where like sort of the it wasn't anything he was necessarily doing wrong, but it was a game where some of his weaknesses were picked on a little bit, especially the way that Memphis was playing defense. But then you get into like the real culprits here, the guys that were just terrible in one form or another. Were D'Angelo Russell, 2 of 11 from the floor, 1 of 5 from 3-point range. He had 3 turnovers against only 4 assists. He was bad. How he was a +1, I'm not entirely sure. But
this is one of those games where don't bother looking at the plus minus, because they're all screwy. I mean, seriously.
But I was just saying, like, if you're sitting or so, like, there are nights where you're shooting and stuff like that. You can like glance at it. Well, it wasn't really hurtful or whatever. D'Angelo was really bad. And Anthony Davis, you could argue is worse just based on his sort of station on the team and his his status. 13 points, 4 of 14 from the floor, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. He did have 5 block shots. I thought defensively he was certainly better than he was offensively, but he was hesitant. He was bullied. He was pushed around. And bothered by different looks that Memphis gave him, in ways that, compared to how he has been playing, Andy, and how he has been doing things, for the most part, were really jarring. It kind of reminded me of those. We make these comparisons sometimes with Powell, the bad Powell game where you just like he's. Like where it feels like all the stereotypes were kind of true.
AD got hit in this game by an elbow from Desmond Bane. It was totally inadvertent. His face was in the wrong place for Bane's elbow, and it actually
Bane's elbow even has big muscles on it too. Like his whole anything attached to his arm.
Yeah, and he had to get it worked on, and it was swelling a lot in this game. And I actually tweeted out at Cam Brothers that I was wondering if AD was having trouble seeing in the game. Like, and people started immediately hitting me with like, you're making excuses for him. The guy's soft. He's playing like
he was one of 6, I think, at that point already. And
right, but
so on.
But whatever possibility for a recovery seemed to go away from there, and he also just seemed really out of sorts and was missing shots that, quite frankly, I was really wondering, is he not seeing what's in front of him? And I was not making excuses for him. The guy wasn't playing well. I was just wondering, is he not playing well at least, I don't know, 15% because he's having
can't see.
Yeah, I mean, just because there was so much with AD that honestly just seemed out of character, like legitimately out of character. And by the way, too, I don't want to hear, and preface this, I love you all, Locked On Lakers listeners, YouTube viewers,
there's a butt coming,
commenters.
I really sense a butt coming.
Absolutely love all of you, appreciate all of you. We say this all the time.
Yeah,
this
there's
channel
definitely a butt coming. Yeah,
well past our expectations because of all of you. So sincerely, I
think here it is.
I don't want to hear another damn thing from any of you about how Brian and I are the ones perpetuating this narrative that Anthony Davis never does quite enough to keep people satisfied and that he always leaves you wanting more. And the reality is he's having an incredible season and people don't recognize it because the media or the podcasters or the radio hosts or the TV analysis, or in Brian's case, we do all that stuff. We're the ones that keep perpetuating this because I'm telling you right now, go through our timeline at Cam Brothers. I can't repeat the things that were being said about Anthony Davis, not on a podcast network with our language restrictions, but I couldn't repeat it on the Curse Like a Sailor network. Like some of the things being said about him were just flat out nasty. So
look,
I don't want to hear it anymore.
Andy and I, we've been really pitching Locked On Profanity hard, and even a lot of the tweets wouldn't have been able to go there.
I'm just gonna say, y'all are thinking this, all right? You're thinking it, and you don't want to admit that you're thinking it, but you are. But I do love you.
Two separate issues here. When you look at it, I think between D'Lo and Anthony Davis. Looking forward to the rest of the series. So I want to talk about that next. We tweeted out the clip before we get back to the individual players of Dillon Brooks after the game. Basically, he was talking about how he wished he could guard prime LeBron, back in his Miami days, back in his Cleveland days, because it would have been a much better challenge, a worthy challenge. He called LeBron old, and he did all of this wearing what, honestly, it reminded me of the sort of outfit that my 4-year-old daughter might come downstairs in, playing dress up, like clothes that don't quite seem to go together, a big honking almost like a Flava Flav alarm clock style necklace with a big DB, for that he was clearly bespoke. That is not something one gets off the rack. Big chunky, like Elton John style sunglasses. Like it was quite a
shirt
look.
open.
Sure. Oh well, yeah. That's.
I don't even think the shirt has buttons. It might be a jacket. I'm not even sure what that thing is.
Some sort of shacket. But like it was Dillon Brooks leaning hard into the character and part that he plays. And look, as we talked about in our preview with the Locked On Grizzlies guys, as annoying as Dillon Brooks is to everyone else, they love him in the locker room. And it's probably for stuff like this that the energy it provides, the confidence it provides, whatever. So we'll talk a little bit about what might be coming through the rest of the series, because Dillon Brooks even said, like, I poke the bear. I'm a bear poker. And
he said he doesn't respect anyone until they give him 40.
Right. 38. Apparently not 39. Not going to do it.
It's actually a pretty heady play. I don't want to spoil everything we're saying, Dillon Brooks, but it is kind of a heady play because the way basketball works in reality, it is really impossible to be matched up against somebody enough that they can truly give you 40.
Yeah.
So you really are laying the parameters of this so you can respect nobody.
He's giving himself a lot of runway.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say. And I actually thought one of the most interesting moments of this game is in the second half when the Lakers were making a push. This is in the third quarter, and LeBron was leading this charge a little bit. Dylan Brooks kind of started getting in his face, and it looked like he might be going on tilt. And you come out of the timeout, and Taylor Jenkins had put Dylan Brooks on the bench in favor of David Roddy, who, by the way, their rookie, who played very well, and has hair that is just similar enough to Dylan Brooks on TV that it took a second for me to be like, oh, wait, and their body types are somewhat similar. So I was like, wait a minute. Oh, wait, no, that they took him out. I thought that was a really interesting move for Jenkins to actually pull Brooks from the game. And it took me a second to realize it until, Roddy hit a couple big threes and he played quite well. So we'll talk more about that because it is going to be a major subplot for the rest of the series if it wasn't already. I mentioned before the break, though, Andy, I think about the D'Lo thing and the AD thing a little bit differently. Anthony Davis has a very good track record of coming back. If you saw his body language, you saw his face, his posture in the post-game press conference. LeBron was obviously disappointed by the result, but speaking very optimistically. Didn't seem down. Kept up a good spirit. Davis looked like he just played a really crappy game and knew it. And he has a pretty good track record of bouncing back from these things. I am reasonably confident Anthony Davis bounces back with a really strong game 3. I'm a little more concerned, though, about D'Lo, because if you go back, Andy, to the play-in, he was really bad in the play-in, and he was really bad on Wednesday. And I'm not talking about, Austin Reeves on Wednesday wasn't great, but he wasn't a train wreck. He wasn't an active negative on the floor for the Lakers. This is 2 out of the last 3 games where Russell has been just a negative presence for the Lakers. And I'm a big D'Lo fan, and the Lakers need him to be better than this. Certainly, to get through the rest of this series, and if they have any real dreams of going beyond it, because you can't. I don't think you need some of that backward production, and you don't want to have to make Hachimura, for example, play like he has in game 1 or game 2 in order for this offense to stay afloat.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's important that D'Lo pick up his game because his backup is also in something of a slump as well. So the solution, at least for the time being, is not flip the starting lineup, have Dennis Schroeder start, have D'Lo come off the bench. And, I had been optimistic, or at least growing optimistic heading into this game with D'Angelo Russell, allowing myself to be optimistic just because I thought after a rough first quarter, D'Lo played very well in game 1 against Memphis.
I agree. Really strong second half.
Right. So I was allowing myself some optimism in the face of what is, to be perfectly blunt, a pretty terrible playoff resume. Like, to put this in perspective, D'Angelo Russell on his career, and this does not count tonight's performance, these numbers, but frankly, tonight's numbers are only going to make them worse. D'Angelo Russell is on his career a 35% shooter from the field in the playoffs. A, that's really bad. B, to put just how bad that is in perspective and how worse it is in the playoffs versus the regular season for D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell has never had a single season in his career where he shot 35% from the field. He's never shot He's never shot below 40% for a season from the field in his career. He is a career 35% shooter overall in the playoffs. And he's also on his career about 35% from behind the arc, which is below his career averages. But what it underscores is those aren't great numbers, but compared to what he's doing on anything that isn't a three, they're like prime Ray Allen. Like he has struggled over his career in the playoffs. He already has, on his resume, a bad series against the Grizzlies. And it makes you wonder, either how this setting affects him in any way mentally, if there are things about D'Angelo's play that heavy scouting can do well against,
or just don't translate well the
right.
different style that happens in a postseason, whatever it might be.
And I won't pretend to have the answers, but I can just look at the numbers. The numbers are what they are, and they're stark.
Yeah, and you look at this game, and as much as again 59 points they allowed in the first half, but I would also like to point out that they didn't score either. Like, part of their problem was carelessness with the ball that allowed Memphis to. I really thought, and we'll wrap here because there's going to be a lot more to talk about for Friday's show. Lakers scored 19 points in the first quarter, 25 in the second, and we talked in the preview and all the preview work that we did before the series started. The inability. It's going to be important for the Lakers to hit shots because Memphis is going to be able to get out and run. They're going to be able to play against imbalanced defenses, even if it's sort of a semi break or something like that. And that happened. The Lakers missed a ton of shots and they turned the ball over, which gave Memphis the opportunity to get better looks than they otherwise would get. And then you combine it.
Memphis had 10 points off turnovers in the first quarter.
Yes. 20
of their 50 points in the paint, Memphis came in the first quarter. Like, that's how much this first quarter did the Lakers in.
Yeah, 30-19 they were down after the first quarter. But, they only turned the ball over 12 times. So they took better care of the ball as it went along. And in the second half were fine. And, they didn't play a bad second half. And defensively, they were pretty good. But they shot 41% from the floor. They shot 27% from three-point range. AD and D'Lo were a combined 7 for 25. It's just not going to get it done. And if you're looking for something to kind of comfort you, and we'll wrap it here and get into Darvin Ham more and Brooks versus LeBron more, all that coming up on Friday. We just couldn't do it all in one show. If you're looking for something to make you feel better, they still could have won this game in the fourth quarter if they'd hit a few open shots. They could have won. They still could have won this game. I was looking at this whole night, like the basketball analyst part of me was like, it doesn't matter if you deserve to win a game. It is always better to win the game. Always in the playoffs, it is always better to win the game. The parent inside me, the parent part of me was like, they reminded me of a kid who, your kids who put off their project, their class project till the night before and expect to try to do it all at once and bring it in. And while, you kind of want to see them get an F because they deserve it and you'll learn a lesson. Those were the two parts of me that were having an argument on Wednesday night. They didn't deserve to win this game, and they still had a chance to do it anyway, which if you're a Lakers fan, you could look at and say, it's going to be hard for them to be much worse than they were on Wednesday, and they still had a chance to win. Anyway, we'll get into Darvin Ham. We'll get into Brooks versus LeBron and what that might look going forward. More Ja updates for the weekend and whether or not his availability might go up. Plenty more to talk about after a really disappointing game 2. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to see the show, leave some comments, ask some questions. We'll look through it and pull out some stuff hopefully to use for Friday's show. We'll see everyone tomorrow.